Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Ken Bradford with the Department of Education. As you can see this morning, I am wearing my Teacher Leader Summit t-shirt. And in my background, you can see I'm here at the convention center all by myself this morning. And so we are going to begin the session, and I'm going to take a couple of quick chats here. Let me just go through these real quick, make sure we get everybody online. And okay, we can begin. Let's transition to the next slide in the session description. And so this is today. What we're doing here is I'm providing you guys an overview of student promotion, student planning, the placement supports. We'll talk about the CTE curriculum and course materials. We'll give an update on Jumpstart 2.0. We'll talk about supplemental course allocation, and we'll talk about the dual enrollment updates. We'll then go into, and I will share the links and the resources so that you can go back to those. I mean, we only have an hour. We have lots of topics. So what I really am going to do is kind of give you a real general overview of the items, going to point you to where resources are, where you can go into a deep dive of resource. I think as you get questions today, I'm going to try to pause at various increments in the session and just kind of group the like questions and answer those for you. But I would also just recommend that you always have the option to email us at the department and ask for further detail. I think the easiest email for you to reach us at is jumpstart@la.gov. That's an email account that's managed by our CTE team, as well as myself. And so anything you send in there, we can direct to the appropriate channels. So let me go to the next slide, and I'm going to give you an outline of the items that we're going to talk about today. I want to talk to you about the student promotion and planning support guidance that we have released. Then I'm going to give you updates on pupil progression plans for 2020-2021. We'll talk about the individual student planning supports, both the individual academic improvement plans and the IGPs. I want to talk about the release of the high school planning guidebook that came out last week. We'll talk about supporting and mentoring your graduating class, provide you with resources about non-core academic coursework in CTE. We'll touch on Jumpstart 2.0. I'll let you know where we are relative to implementation. I'll also share with you some answers we've been providing to the field recently about eligibility and the transition year, ninth grade enrollments, etc. I'll brief you on our supplemental course allocation catalog and the course choice program, give you the updates on dual enrollment, and then again, as time permits towards the end, I'll take some additional Q&A questions. So with that, the first thing I want to talk about today is the student promotion and planning supports guidance. So what we'll do is we'll transition to the next slide here, and what you have linked here is a document that the department put out on May 8th, and it's part of the Strong Start 2020 planning guide. But it's a comprehensive document. Really, it's a guidebook that deals with all things relative to student promotion. What I would ask is that, when we're talking about things about transitioning from, grade 4 to grade 5, when you're looking at individual academic improvement plans, when you have questions about the pupil progression plan, when you're looking at putting students in transitional ninth grade, all of those type of resources, policies, the flexibilities that have been provided as a result of those policies, those have all been embedded in this one document that the department released on May 8th for the upcoming school year. So I would ask that as you, as school system leaders and teachers, you look at this document you download this document, review it. That's where you'll find the most pertinent information relative to promotion. Next is the pupil progression plans. Just a second. Okay. Pupil progression plans. So on a normal cycle, a normal year that would have been pre-COVID, we would have asked for school systems to submit their pupil progression plans to us prior to the academic school year start. What we have done this year is we are asking that you submit to us pupil progression plans no later than September the 11th. And what the pupil progression plan is going to do is it's going to be the guide for you for promoting students. Really, it's setting the guidance for you for your promotion policies next year to go into 2021, 2022. So, students that are moving this year into, let's go say, going from 4th to 5th grade, or I'm going from 8th grade into 9th grade, or 8th grade into transitional 9th grade. Those type of policies, the flexibilities, they've already been provided to school systems. So your school system already has a plan for moving your 4th graders or your 8th graders into the 9th grade. So this pupil progression plan template, it's basically a paint by numbers. We populated it with the policy that is currently in place for 2021, 2022. I'm sorry, for 2020, 2021. You just need to go in and, basically paint by number, fill in the blanks on this. It also, though, still gives you those opportunities to do things within your pupil progression plan, such as one, identify accelerated learning options for your students. It also gives you that autonomy and that flexibility in the pupil progression plan to put in how you're going to do class rankings, how you're going to determine local GPAs. The template for this year, it does have 2 significant policy updates. And again, what we have done in the template is we have built that space for you to basically cut and paste the policy and plug it in so you'll have it in yours. There's a new policy that the board approved in March that is related to credit recovery. And we have a new piece to the pupil progression plan relative to the NCAA policies for course credits. At a meeting that I attended with superintendents in late January, early February, they were asking us of the department, when we built our pupil progression plan template, could we include a component about NCAA course credits? And so we have done that. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth on detail in an upcoming slide on that. So first, I do want to update you on credit recovery policy that is taking place for 2020, 2021. This was brought to the board for approval in March. And in its simplest terms, it is number one, well, I'll go through the bullets. So it has to be, number one, the policy says that every school system will have a credit recovery policy, and they will put it into their pupil progression plan. And here's the gist of the policy. Number one, students may earn a maximum of 7 credit recovery units that can be applied toward graduation requirements, and no more than 2 annually. Now, if a student does earn more than 2 annually, or there are circumstances where at the time of graduation they have more than 7 credit recovery courses on their transcript, they just need to submit to the department and provide a rationale on why a student had more than 2, or why a student has more than 7 on the transcript. And again, this is for us to have a quality assurance check to do this. And so the other thing that it is requiring is that all academic records must stay on the student's transcript. So as an example, if I take US history my junior year and I failed that course, that's an academic record. That does get applied to the student's transcript. However, if I come in summer school and I do credit recovery U.S. history, that also goes on the student's transcript. So this policy is saying that the completed credit recovery coursework, like credit recovery U.S. history, that needs to be codified and labeled on the transcript, as well as the student's first attempt where he or she failed the course. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, and I have 3 or 4 more bullets here about things that were also in the policy. This remained in the policy. Instructional minute requirements have been waived for credit recovery coursework. Credit recovery coursework must be aligned to state content standards and the course content standards. They must include a pre-assessment to identify the unfinished learning, and credit recovery courses must include a post-assessment to show that the student has demonstrated the proficiency in those areas where there were gaps. Online credit recovery courses must also have an assigned Louisiana teacher of record or a certified teacher of record that is recognized through a multi-state reciprocity agreement. And last, the end of course exam weight and a student's final grade determined by an LEA must be the same for a traditional course and a credit recovery course. Those are the credit recovery policies. We're hoping, again, that this credit recovery policy is providing you the clarity that you need to. It was very ambiguous for a while. Do we have to post the student's grade? We have a repeat delete. There was clarity on who gets assigned to this course. And what we're saying now is if you have students that are working on credit recovery courses, for example, in a computer lab, there's 6 students working on 6 different course titles. Somebody is responsible for those students in that coursework. And the school has to have a designated teacher of record for those students that participated in the credit recovery coursework. I'll move next to the NCAA policy. And again, both the credit recovery policy and the NCAA policy were something that the department worked in conjunction with a group of school system superintendents so that we could provide clarity for y'all. And relative to the NCAA, there's a couple of things that were getting flagged in districts where they asked us to come in and help them. And as an example, when a student takes what the NCAA would call as a non-traditional course, that particular course, there has to be a written policy in the school system about students taking non-traditional courses for the NCAA to accept the credit. There has to be a teacher of record for students to have that credit recognized by the NCAA. So it has to be transcripted for it to be recognized by the NCAA. So what we have done is we have basically taken that language that the NCAA requires to recognize credit, and we have put that in the pupil progression plan template. And you can go in and you can address this in your pupil progression plan so that you're not having to do something completely different outside of your pupil progression plan for students that are seeking NCAA credit. Next, we'll go to the individual student planning supports. 2 things here that I want to touch on. One is the individual academic improvement plan. This is a plan pre-COVID that was required to be issued to 4th grade students whom were not proficient on their LEAP assessments. And it was an academic plan for these struggling students to give them the support so that they could get back on grade level. And it was codified and it was required. Well, this year there were no assessments. And so there is no mandate that any particular fourth grader gets an academic improvement plan. However, in that promotion guidance that I alluded to on one of our very first slides, we do in that particular guidance document recommend that if you had struggling fourth grade students, you've moved them to the fifth grade, even without having that EOC assessment, but you know they were struggling. We're asking that you work with those students and provide them that academic improvement plan. An academic improvement plan then stays in place for that student until they demonstrate proficiency at their particular grade level. Academic improvement plans are what's used for struggling students all the way through until they enter the 8th grade. Once a student enters the 8th grade, the individual graduation plan kicks in, also known as the IGP. This is codified in state law. It's in statute that every student beginning in 8th grade will have an IGP. So what I'm going to do on the next slide is I'm going to go into a little bit more depth on the IGP. And yeah, so IGPs. Let me readjust. Okay. IGPs. Basically what the law says is this, is that every student beginning in the 8th grade, he or she will have a plan that outlines the upcoming school year's coursework. That starts in 8th grade. In the 10th grade, a designation will be made as to whether that student is going to work on a career diploma pathway or whether he or she is going to go on the TOPS university pathway, and continuing to post that information in their IGP. So let's talk about the things for this year. So we've released the IGP. It's now available for 2020, 2021. School systems, you know, if you had to close the year early, you didn't have an opportunity to do this on March 14th. By March 14th, you can do this when the school semester begins in the fall. But the template has been updated. Here are the areas that, the buckets of areas that's included on the IGP. Assessment results, career goals, coursework taken, and coursework that is to be scheduled in the upcoming academic year. There is a diagnostics section for those students that may have had unfinished learning from last year. There's a section in there now that has been added for counselors to that use some of the free diagnostic tools that the department has been sharing for students to gauge where their unfinished learning was from the previous year, to address that in the IGP. Extracurricular activities the students participate in to be documented on the IGP. Beginning with that student when they do this first IGP in the 8th grade, there is a requirement for the parent signature, the counselor signature, signatures on the IGPs. Those spots are available, they're on the IGP. Then at the end of the 10th grade, the selection is made, and in essence, the IGP is closed out for that student, their senior year, as they complete the FAFSA or the financial aid requirement for the IGP. Again, this form is available. It's updated. It's online. You have an opportunity again to work with the students and do these in the fall if you weren't able to close them out. And as we're going along, if anybody wants to send a message to me, Ken Bradford, I'll be happy to answer that here in the private chat. If you send me those messages, I'll queue those up and try to address those for the group. Next, the high school planning guidebook. And you know, it used to be such that back, around the 2014 timeframe, when our school counselors were looking for that resource document to see what are the graduation requirements this year, what they would do is they would go to our hundreds of pages of policy bulletin 741. They would then in turn look and try to figure out which courses apply, which courses don't apply, etc. And so what we started publishing was a high school student planning guide. And it provides checklists for students at every grade level, really beginning in the 8th grade as you transition into the 9th grade or transitional 9th grade. And it walks you through step by step as a counselor, the supports, the things you need to be considering. But probably the most coveted part of the high school student planning guide is the pages where it's almost like a pull-out set of pages where you can go in and you can look and you can see what courses count. What courses count for the 4 social studies on the Tufts University diploma? What courses count towards the 4 English courses on a career diploma? And what we do is anytime a new course is passed or added in that core academic area throughout the year, we take, and then when we release the newest guidebook for the upcoming school year, we make sure that those are embedded in there. So we've released this, worked with our team yesterday. We actually have 2,500 of these, 2,500 that we have sent an order into state printing to print those. So we plan to get those to the school systems, to the counselors prior to the school year starting. So every principal and every counselor in the state will have one in hand. There's other updates for this year that you will find in our high school student planning guide is Jumpstart 2.0, resources, links, etc. to Jumpstart 2.0, the IGP updates, links to the IGP form, LEAP 2025 updates, update around the intensive algebra course and curriculum, dual enrollment policies, and credit recovery policies. So again, I think if there's any one resource that a high school counselor is really seeking and is really valuable, it's this high school student planning guide. And look for those when you come back to school in the fall. As I said, we post this online, but we also have 2,500 copies being produced at state printing. I'll do the next section and then we'll pause so everyone can just have a little break. Supporting and mentoring graduates. So relative to this, so what we have provided is we've done this at over 70 of our CIR comprehensive schools. We've also expanded our portfolio of support partners so that they have become eligible for CARES Act funding. And that is student planning partners. There are several entities out there that the department has vetted whereby they can go and work with a third party or an intermediary to come in and help those students work through the IGP process for rising 8th graders through 11th graders. These student planning partners, these intermediary supports that can come in and help you, they can also work with your graduates that have graduated. We know this year, for example, when school ended in 2014, with our senior class, there were lots of waivers and lots of flexibilities. As an example, completing financial aid. As a state right now, we're down about between 5 and 6% of the total number of financial aid applications that have been submitted. And so again, what we're saying here at the department is if you leverage one of these student planning partners to come in and help you as a school do student IGP planning, You can also leverage them now to help with those seniors. If you had some seniors that hadn't completed financial aid, or you had some seniors that hadn't been able to complete college applications, or you have students that need help with resumes to enter the workforce, you can use one of these approved student planning partners from our vendor guide to assist you. We've expanded that vendor guide. It's pretty comprehensive. The links are here. They're published on our Strong Start 2020 website as well. You can find them in our student planning support guide. But again, we know that it's been since March 14th in many instances where you've had, significant contact with students, perhaps about their student planning and course scheduling for next year. Again, you can leverage these partners. They're eligible with some of the CIR funding that we have provided. Also, they are eligible for CARES Act funding to come in and support you with that. Okay, let's go to the next slide, and I'm just going to pause here for a minute or two, and I'm going to go through my chat. I'm going to see if I have any key questions that have come in, and then so we'll take a 2-minute break here. Okay, I'll take some. Okay, I've regrouped like questions. And let's see, start answering. I'll answer a few of these before we go to the next section. Are students who are going to be seniors in 2020, 2021 grandfathered in under the old credit recovery policy? So think of it this policy goes into effect for this fall, 2020, 2021. From this fall forward, if you have a student that gets more than 2 credit recovery courses, and or you have a graduate next spring which has exceeded that amount of seven or more on their transcript, rationale is needed to provided to the department for that particular student on why. So it goes into effect. So I'm not quite, I wouldn't say it's grandfathered. I would just say that what is happening is the policy starts for this fall and it's in place. So any student that takes credit recovery courses this fall moving forward, or that has that total accumulation. But yes, so it's starting for this fall. So if a student, for instance, took 3 credit recovery courses last year, we don't need that waiver on the department. We don't need that. We just need it moving forward. So any students starting this upcoming year that exceed 2, or if your graduates are at that amount of 7 threshold, those will require a report to the department on why. And it's not a waiver, it's just a reporting to the department as rationale, much like we do for transitional 9th grade right now. Some questions about the Jumpstart credentials and the IGP. Yes, those should be documented on the student's IGP. Yeah, there's also some questions asking if we could just talk about the difference between grade recovery and credit recovery. So yeah, let me just distinguish between the two. So credit recovery typically means I have failed a course. I received an F. And policy says that to take a course as credit recovery, you have to have previously failed it. So a student has failed it, they come in and they take the course over again. So through credit recovery. If my first attempt in the course, I had the F, then my second attempt in the course through credit recovery, I get a B. Both the F and the B remain on the transcript. The question is, how does that relate to grade recovery and or like repeat delete? And those are actually, it depends. In many cases, they're local decisions. So if I'm in a particular school system and I have a B and a B from credit recovery, and then I took an F, and I'm determining my local GPA, there's an algorithm that the local school system is using. Some school systems will say for your local GPA, the B will replace the F. If it's an English 3 course and it's for TOPS in LOSFA, LOSFA pulls the higher grade. So again, there's a credit recovery policy; those get transcripted, but then there's also a repeat delete, grade recovery, and how is that impacted relative to GPAs? And those are local decisions, and those are actually things that can be codified in your pupil progression plan. Is the high school planning guidebook link available? My understanding it is. We put it we send it out in a counselor newsletter, and we send it out in a counselor newsletter. We also had a newsletter entry on this, but I will double check and make sure that it is subsequent to this. After this today, I will follow up. But yes, it is available. Okay, we'll move in now to the next section, and we'll talk about career and technical education. So what we provided here is in the Strong Start 2020 plan, there was an opportunity for school systems to one, use some of their CARES Act funding for some CTE course materials to address adaptations that may need to be needed with continuous learning. But also there was an opportunity to request some incentive funding to pay for some of those costs. So we are trying to and continue to make it a priority from our office in the Office of Student Opportunities to ensure that you are getting non-core academic and CTE curriculum resources made available to you, such that should we begin school in the fall and adaptations are needed for that curricula in order for you to continue distance education with CTE courses. So we have provided in our course materials and in our guidance links to various CTE curricula that is actually done by CTE clusters. So we'll go to the next slide, and the link that you will see here in the next slide is our non-core CTE curriculum and course material guidance. And again, as you're thinking about how am I going to deliver, some of the Adobe classes, how can I deliver NCCR curriculum? We have provided that information in our guidance document, and we've provided links to the vendors or the primary source for this course material. We've made it CARES Act eligible funding, incentive CARES Act funding eligible. Of course, the career development funds are eligible for this. In many cases, your Perkins fundings are eligible for this. And this is something that we are continuing to work on. I mean, daily, our staff here is looking for resources to provide and put out, as well as just following along nationally, how are we going to be able to provide that instruction for some of those hands-on skills craft? And so, again, we've got a resource document. We are frequently updating it, and we would encourage you to review those documents And then also the department has a Start Strong CTE work group where school systems have had an opportunity to identify a CTE leader to join us on a weekly call where we share best practices, we share updated resources specifically to CTE as we move into the next academic year. At this point, I'll transition into Jumpstart 2.0. I'll take us through Jumpstart 2.0. I will answer some of your questions about Jumpstart 2.0, and then that should leave us enough time to talk about supplemental course allocation and dual enrollment. So at the March Believesi meeting, the state board approved a suite of 11 new Jumpstart 2.0 pathways. There were a couple of things that were also part of this, were a part of this. One of that was that we built in a transition year, meaning that the fall of 2020, 2021, these new Jumpstart 2.0 pathways are available for early adopters, but Jumpstart 1.0 pathways are also available for incoming freshmen. So you have a year right now where you could, a kid who's an incoming ninth grader, that's when the clock starts ticking for their cohort. That's when they start their, that's what locks them into and grandfathers them into their current graduation requirements. This year's freshmen, you have two choices if you're on a career diploma pathway, 1.0 or 2.0 pathways. Then when the next year, subsequent year to that, we will phase into just the Jumpstart 2.0 pathways. So I'll go to the next slide, and these were the next slide shows the proposed Jumpstart 2.0 pathways that were approved for incoming freshmen in 2020, 2021. If we could transition the slide, please. And we took over 40 Jumpstart pathways and we condensed them down into 11. And then we further aligned those 11 pathways with the Carl Perkins clusters. And then we've aligned our Jumpstart regional teams with the Carl Perkins teams. And then we also still have the existing K-16 pathways also still available for students. So, you have the 11 new pathways, and then you have the 11 K-16 pathways. Many of those are many school systems are still early adopters of these K-16 pathways, many of which have a focus on STEM. And then you have some others in here like the pre-educator pathway, which aren't STEM focused. Many of these have university partnerships as well. So let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about the Jumpstart 1.0 pathway. So much like the Jumpstart pathways that were adopted in 2014 for Jumpstart 1.0, and then from 2014, through the spring of 2020, those Jumpstart 1.0 pathways, they were constantly being updated to reflect the needs of the economy, the needs of school systems, the needs of business and industry, aligned with Carl Perkins, et cetera. We see the Jumpstart 2.0 pathways being the same thing, whereas these new pathways are going to continue to be enhanced with applicable universal courses, core pathway courses, and relevant terminal credentials. So, we made a commitment at the March Believesi meeting that these Jumpstart pathways, we would continue to keep them under review. We would continue working with school systems to get the right courses and the right pathways and continue to keep them dynamic and expand upon that foundational set. We have also identified school system CTE supervisors to work with us on this. We have small school system CTE supervisor representing smaller school systems. We have a large school system supervisor We're working with, been designated to us to work with us, both West Feliciana and Washita. We're having weekly dialogue with them about, what we're hearing from the field, what needs to be added. We're also working with the Workforce Commission. We're working with economic development. We're monitoring the occupational forecasting. We're monitoring new credentials. We're working with Board of Regents. We continue working with Bessie. And right now, I think, what I think you can expect to see, and I'll transition to the next slide. I think what you can expect to see is, prior to the fall school year beginning, is this summer is our consultation with our small school system leaders, our large school system leader, monitoring our Jumpstart at la.gov, working with economic development, working with Workforce Commission. But we fully expect to bring an additional recommendation for 3 to 4 additional universal courses that could cross and cut all pathways and be used. We expect to bring additional core CTE courses to each of those 11 pathways. And we expect to add additional IBCs and exit credentials to each of those pathways. Monday is June 1st. We plan to work on this through the month of June. We plan to have our recommendation ready for July. We will be providing updates through our CTE Strong 2020 work group, keeping our CTE supervisors apprised of the progress and where the trends are. And so, I think it will be fully transparent on where we land in each of these 3 bullets here of what we will bring to the board. I believe we'll probably be looking at an early August board meeting. I believe you'll probably see documents prepped by mid-July, and be able to be shared, fully with this as the full recommendation that we're bringing. Again, I think it's important also that if in your school system, your CTE supervisor is participating in that Strong Start 2020 work group. I mean, there's a specific work group for CTE supervisors, so that they can be participating in weekly updates, weekly best practices, and resources that are becoming available. If they're not currently, I'd encourage you, email jumpstart@la.gov to get them in the loop on that. Next slide. Can we go back one slide real quick, please? Just some other updates relative to Jumpstart 2.0. We're currently redesigning and updating the portfolio of IBC fact sheets, identifying the STS codes, linking to the images of the IBCs, links to accommodations, and alignment to most recent standards. So we are in the process also of updating our fact sheets. We're also in the process of getting a larger presence of Jumpstart 2.0 on the website. So look for those things. Looks like I have 11 minutes left, so I'm going to go real quickly through the next 3 items, and then I'll pause for the remaining time to answer questions. So let's go straight to the supplemental course allocation and the course choice slide. So supplemental course allocation. So this is the $17+ million annually that is included in the MFP. Those dollars are proportionally divided up among school systems based on your grade 7 through 12 enrollment. Historically, what has happened is in March during the academic year, when school systems have reconciled their rosters, what we do is per statute, the unspent funds of school systems for the academic year is collected. It is redistributed for use in the summer. It supports the Jumpstart Summers programs. This year, at the request of school system superintendents, what we did was rather than collect those funds, and we actually extended the Jumpstart course provider portfolio of course offerings through June 30th. We allowed school systems to retain all those dollars. There were no supplemental course allocation dollars picked up this year and redistributed. And this is affording schools the opportunity to use these dollars with course choice providers. If you don't expend them by June 30th, they will remain with your district and they will extend into the next academic year. We've tried to take our course choice 2020 catalog and this year make things a little more clear to help you with some of those course offerings. We delineate those by the type of content, whether it's non-core content, whether it's core academic content like English, math, science, or social studies, or a CTE course online. And then we further break those courses down for you as to whether they're face-to-face, online, or hybrid as you make decisions about offering course choice courses. The portal opens this year on July 1st for your fall 2020-2021 registration reports. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, which is dual enrollment. I would just say here that I'll give you two sets of updates. I'm going to give you the pre-COVID update, and then I'm going to give you a post-COVID update. So pre-COVID, let's go back one slide if we could, please. Pre-COVID, there were some additions made by the Board of Regents that allowed some flexibilities to use LEAP assessments as an example to meet a ACT requirement if the student had not taken an ACT. So there was already some flexibilities coming for dual enrollment prerequisites other than an ACT that would be based on LEAP scores. And that was done in January. Well, then if we fast forward to post-COVID, the March, we'll go to the next slide, please. The March 2020 statewide ACT assessment was suspended. There were additional dates offered to school systems for that testing. There was a June date, a couple of October dates, and then the national April ACT exam, that date was also pushed back into the summer. So we know that, and Board of Regents was cognizant of the fact that there will be students who did not have an opportunity to take an ACT exam. And those students are going to be coming on campus this school year and may have wanted to take an ACT course take a dual enrollment course and not have had the ACT requirement. So the Board of Regents has passed a policy where historically your minimum requirements were that the 18 English, 19 math ACT subscores to get into dual enrollment in your core academics. A policy has been passed that for the 2020-2021 school year, in lieu of an ACT score, that a 2.5 GPA and a high school counselor recommendation could be used as a substitute for an ACT score. And this is an opportunity that has been made available to school systems. So, and again, this is something that the higher ed institutions will be taking into consideration as they offer their dual enrollment prerequisites. So we just wanted to make you aware of this, that this policy was passed, and there are opportunities for dual enrollment should a student not have taken the ACT. Okay, I'll pause here for the last 4 to 5 minutes, and I will monitor chats, see what kind of chats we have coming in both here and into our Jumpstart accounts. Yeah, I think I'm getting a question here relative about information on Jumpstart 2.0 pathways, review committees, which is representative of your small and large school system superintendents, BESI, Board of Regents, et cetera. How can they provide feedback? I think what I would just say, and I'll reiterate it again, if I am a high school, or Betty, if I am a school system CTE supervisor, you know, what I would be doing is I would be joining the CTE Strong 2020 weekly call that the department is hosting. I believe the last number that I was told was we had about between 40 and 45 school system CTE supervisors participating on that call. I would ask that you really make an effort to join that call. As we move forward as well, we will continue to add updates to our newsletter as things transpire and things become available, as well as any school system planning calls that occur. So getting dual enrollment questions, some clarification. So yeah, so let me come back to this. So historically there has been a GPA requirement and there has been an ACT 18-19, score combo requirement for students to get into those core academic dual enrollment courses. What Board of Regents passed was a policy that now allows for the 2.5 GPA. And instead of that combo on 18-19, a counselor recommendation should suffice. This is an option that is going to be made available for the higher ed institutions. So they will have this flexibility to use that as a prerequisite in lieu of the ACT score. Ultimately, as I understand it, that's the minimum bar that gets set for that, and then a four-year university can enhance or they can add onto their own for prerequisites. But there has been a segue for them through the COVID for them to be able to have the GPA and the ACT. Yep. Can I repeat the name of the call again? And that is the CTE Strong 2020. If you're a CTE supervisor and you're not participating in that from your school district, yeah, please email us at jumpstart@la.gov. Make a request that you would like to be part of the CTE Strong 2020 calls that we host with our school system CTE leaders as we begin to start the school year for that. Okay, just in closing, I would just like to again emphasize, leverage the jumpstart@la.gov email account for your questions, monitor newsletters, school system planning calls, participate in CTE Strong 2020 if you're CTE. Please take a look at these resources that we have linked to today. I will also follow up and make sure that our high school student planning guide is published. There's 2,500 of those. Those will be forthcoming out to your school systems prior to school starting, so you'll have those to share. And with that, moderator, I will close out the session. I appreciate everybody attending today. Again, I hope some of y'all are getting to represent the Teacher Leader Summit with some of your past Teacher Leader t-shirts. Again, very empty here in the convention center today with myself in the hallway. As you can see, I'm really the only one here. There's no one in the background. But appreciate everybody. Moderator, at this time, I'll turn it over to you for closeout.
Thank you very much. We appreciate Ken sharing all that great information with us. The PowerPoints are on the Sketch app for you to get from if you go to this session. A123 is the session number. If you go to this session, you'll be able to access the materials. And please use your Sketch app to complete the evaluation for this session. Thank you very much.